Okay, so if you didn't hear, last week Bungie dropped a pretty notorious TWID, aka This Week in Destiny, on Bungie.net that had a few things in it that a lot of players were fairly upset about. And up until yesterday, I was planning on making a video talking about the changes they went over in that TWID and why I thought they were bad for the power grind and for the game overall. That is until yesterday, when the video was literally getting finished up by my wonderful editor Maggie, when we heard from Bungie on social media that they heard us, they thought about it, and they decided, hey, we're gonna kill those changes that we told you about last week. And stay tuned for today's TWID for more information regarding the portal and the power grind. And I read today's TWID, and there's a section right in the beginning going over portal and power progression stuff. But it's not really a lot, which makes sense for the moment, because if they just threw their new portal plan into the trash based on community feedback, they are probably now taking the time to construct a new plan for improving the portal and the power grind, so not really that much to communicate until the new plan is done and ready to share. Which again, I get, but it's hard to get excited about other changes in the TWID, even stuff I'm interested in, like how the Warlock buddy builds are eventually going to be tied to the grenade stat, when I'm just 100% thinking about the portal and the power grind situation. It kind of feels like trying to get excited about the new tiling in the master bathroom of your home when the foundation of the house is currently on a slant, but I digress. Anyway, there was just one line in the TWID that kind of made me raise my eyebrow. After they talked about how much they wanted to improve the portal, they wrote the following: "We want Destiny to be a game where you want to hop in with friends to level rather than declining an invite to spend time in a solo activity for the sake of progression. In this case, we understand that alternate experiences need to be brought up a bit more to help things feel good rather than pushing other options down in the short term, and we don't want players who generally just want to play solo or pinnacle ops feeling like they're getting caught by a stray nerf. Our current approach is to bring options up and make sure they feel good before we look at the problem children." That last line in particular is the one I don't like. Not the "our current approach is to bring things up and make sure they feel good." That part I'm cool with, yay for that. But the "before we look at the problem children" part. What exactly are the problem children? The efficiency of power grinding solo ops? Because look, man, I'm glad that they want to bring other options in the portal up, but if they just turn around later and decide to correct the problem children, aka find a different way to bring down solo ops if it's too generous of a farming situation, then we're just right back to where we were last week. I think the time has come where we need to re-evaluate the power grind and the portal. This should not be a time for nerfing. This should be a time for buffing, only buffing. I know that the power grind should be meaningful and impactful, and I know Bungie probably doesn't want a world where the power grind is so easy and free to the point where players blow through everything in a week and then whine about how they have nothing else to do. But we also don't want the opposite, players completely tapping out of the power grind altogether because it's insanely, laughably long. Because the road to max power is a very, very long road in the Edge of Fate, it's only natural that players who want to attempt to get to max power want to do so in the fastest way possible, so they can spend more time doing other things in the game that they might actually enjoy, other than the power grind. And yeah, this is probably where a lot of people are going to say, well, look, man, who cares? These players are doing it to themselves. They don't need to grind to max power. This is a self-inflicted punishment. And I mean, yeah, that is true. But then again, your Guardian's overall power level has a direct correlation to the tier and therefore the strength of your loot. So if you want the strongest loot in the game, aka tier 5 weapons and especially tier 5 armor, you gotta power grind. And because Destiny 2 is a looter shooter, it should come as no surprise that many people who play this game really want stronger, more valuable loot. We are big Chungus dragons sitting on piles of hard-earned treasure, and this is where the disconnect comes in for a lot of people. And what I mean by that is, because the strength of your loot is based on your power level and not the difficulty of the activity that you're playing, it makes it so that a lot of people don't feel like their playtime is being rewarded or respected, so they're just not doing certain activities. For example, raids are supposed to be some of the hardest and most challenging PvE content that Destiny has to offer. It is literally an endgame activity, and even if I'm max power, which I am, there is currently no way at all for me to get tier 5 raid loot from playing a raid, even if I launch the raid and put on the maximum amount of feats. The most I'm getting is a chance at a tier 4 drop. I genuinely think that's kind of insane. An endgame PvE activity with 5 feats, the maximum amount of difficulty ramped all the way up, chance at a tier 4 drop. Granted, later into Ash and Iron, when epic raids get here, I think that running the raid with 3 feats will give me a chance at tier 5 raid loot, which yay, but still, right now at the current moment, because I have the raid exotic unlocked, I feel like there's no reason for me to rerun the raid. Yes, I could run it and get a tier 2 or tier 3 weapon drop or armor drop, but a big part of me feels, why bother? If I run it later in the epic raid, then I'll get tier 4 or tier 5 drops. So why run the raid now for a lower tier drop that I'll eventually replace with literally stronger loot later? Well, you could always run the raid for fun, you might say, and I mean, yeah, sure, but I've already ran the raid a whole bunch. I've experienced the fun factor. Now I just want to be incentivized and rewarded for my playtime. But because raids don't improve power level and they don't drop high tier loot, I feel like a lot of people just don't see the point, and I don't really blame them. But yeah, on the off chance that Bungie is actually watching, as we approach Ash and Iron and beyond, I would like for them to keep in mind something that they themselves said in a TWID earlier this month. Power progression is our most important topic right now, and we are still identifying the adjustments we plan to make. Progression is clearly slower than we want it to be, and we plan to generally increase the speed of progression for most players. If power progression is slower than you want it to be, then please, I beg you, after things have been brought up, aka after you've made fireteam ops more rewarding in the portal, which I do think is a good idea, please do not go after the problem children. If that means, once again, cracking down on solo ops for being efficient. I get it. You want Destiny to be a game where players don't say, hey man, saw your fireteam invite, sorry, don't want to come play with you. K1 solo ops is the best, fastest farm. I understand that you don't want that to be the case, so fine, go in the other direction. Make it so that fireteam ops and pinnacle ops are very rewarding. Give much more loot and more power, and encourage players to play together and reward them for doing so. I mean, really, look at what just happened not too long ago with the Solstice event. The Solstice event, which historically has just been kinda whatever, was surprisingly a hit this year. One, because the cosmetics were actually kinda awesome, but more importantly, two, because it was a golden shower of loot. Shut up, I know what I said. Players were getting a ton of loot, and it was dropping at a higher tier than we were used to. Many players, myself included, got their first tier 5 drops this way, and with how things were going, some players were actually happy to step into the grind mines because they knew their time was being heavily and appropriately rewarded. Look, I really don't like approaching the territory of armchair dev. I am not a dev, and I am not claiming that I 100% know what the perfect solution to change the power grind or the portal is. But I do know that a lot of players are incredibly frustrated right now. They're not interested in playing endgame PvE content like the new raid because it doesn't help with the power grind and it doesn't drop high tier loot. They are instead grinding the most efficient options available to them in the portal because they want to get to a high level, because they want good loot, because high tier loot is literally mathematically better than lower tier loot. Yes, only by a small amount, but still, better is better, and D2 is a looter shooter. It should be expected that many players want the strongest stuff to make the best builds and to show off their best stuff. Look, I can probably go to the Lighthouse and Trials with an entire loadout of blue weapons, but nobody cares about or wants to show off their fucking blue weapon collection. You can probably do everything in the game with mid or low level loot, but people don't want that. They want the best loot. It's part of why people enjoy Destiny. Just think of how long the power grind road is right now. And think about the fact that after many players eventually finally get their hands on high tier loot, which for many of them probably won't be until Ash and Iron, they're only going to have so long to enjoy it until Renegades comes out, and then we gotta start all over again. I don't know. I just want to say again, for the record, I only ever claim to speak for myself. These are just my thoughts and feelings. I never claim to speak for the community at large or for anyone else other than me. If you play D2 and you feel completely differently, let me know down in the comment section about the power grind, about the portal, about how rewarding Edge of Fate currently is. Whatever you got, let me hear from you. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.